Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Adrienne Ross Show. I am Adrienne Ross, of course, but it's not just me today. I have a guest on the show today. She is a former colleague of mine. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit about her, and then I'm going to let you meet her. Krista Manchuk is a married mother of 4 beautiful children who resides in Hudson, New York. She is a homeschooling mom who also teaches 9th grade English part-time at her local public high school. This will be her 5th year homeschooling and her 13th year teaching. She also enjoys baking, gardening, working out, and photography, and is currently pursuing a career in photography. And with that, I'll let you meet my former colleague, Krista Manchuk. Here we go. Krista, I am so excited to have you on the Adrienne Ross Show. Thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me.
Yes, and I was already telling the audience, we have been colleagues before. We're former colleagues,
hmm
both in education. And that's why I wanted you here, because I've been out of the classroom now for several years, but the classroom is not really out of me.
hmm
I think once a teacher, always a teacher, you
Yeah.
know? And so I know where you are. School has not yet started. It'll be starting soon.
hmm
But where I am, school will begin in just a few days. School is coming up.
Yep.
And so it's on my mind and it's always on my heart. And so you are unique. But before we get to the education aspect of why you're here, this channel, the folks on this channel love sports. Okay, they love basketball in particular. And you have played some sports. So you played
Yeah.
basketball. Where did you play ball?
I played for Coxsackie Athens High School. I played my junior year and the beginning of my senior year, and then I was injured.
Mm,
But yeah, basketball is my jam, and I
yeah.
kind of got to re-experience that. My oldest played basketball this year, and he reminded me so much of myself just watching him play. So
Yeah.
it's kind of
Yeah.
come full circle.
Exactly.
It was
And
very fun.
you and I and others have played, when I was still teaching,
Yes.
was it 6 o'clock in the morning?
Oh
Or
my gosh, yes. How
was it,
crazy were we?
yeah. And then go and get ready and then come back
Yep.
and get ready to teach.
Yeah, teach all
Are you,
day.
yeah. Do you watch women's basketball?
I haven't been. I
Mm,
haven't been.
yeah.
So my 8-year-old has been giving me the scoop, kind of keeping me up with Caitlin Clark a little bit.
Yes.
Um,
We love
and
Caitlin Clark around here.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I haven't got to watch a whole lot, just little
Yeah.
snippets here and there.
All right. Well, good. Well, let's talk about why I asked you to come on here. You're so unique. Your story is unique to me because not only are you a teacher in the public school,
hmm
but then you also are a homeschool teacher, homeschool mom.
Yes.
So let's go. Let's wait on the homeschool part and let's just talk about public education. What? Give me one word or phrase that you would give to describe the teaching profession.
Oh man. A word or phrase?
Yeah.
You mean as a whole, like all teachers?
Yeah, just the profession, even if it's like the profession right now, how do you sum it up?
Um, whew.
That's a tough one,
I
right?
don't want to be negative, but I kind of feel like dumpster fire comes to mind.
Dumpster fire?
Yes.
Okay, don't worry about being negative or positive. We listen, anybody who's taught or been around teachers, we know there are highs and lows to the whole thing. But why do you say dumpster fire?
Um, there's a lot is a lot. There's always been a lot on teachers, but
Mhm,
I think recently a lot more is being put on teachers. The expectations on teachers continue to increase,
mhm,
and the responsibility for student achievement is being put more and more on the teachers. And so
mhm,
the kids aren't having to take responsibility like they should for their own education. And a
mm,
lot of teachers are burning out. They're leaving
yeah,
because it's just too much. And I think regardless of, you can have good administrators, you can have talented educators, but no one can live under that weight for an extended period of time. It's just not the way education should be. So I think it's really hard and it's sad because you have administrators who are really trying to do the best
Mhm,
for the teachers that are under them,
mhm.
but because of the way education is as a whole and just the expectations maybe of state ed or the regulations that administrators have to follow, it just puts a lot on the teachers.
Mm.
So it's hard.
And yet you've been doing this for 13 years
Yes.
and you're about to do it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how how do you hang in there? Because I know firsthand the challenges
Yeah.
and I've been out for a few years now. So it's escalated. I don't doubt at all.
Yeah.
How do you hang in there, Krista?
Um, well, this past year was really difficult for me. I'm gonna see if I can sit down. The
Your
dog is
dog, I love having your dog with us. That's fine. My cats might jump up here too.
okay. All right. He hasn't seen me all day, so he's like,
I'm
pay
fine
attention.
with it. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, this past year, I really saw the value in my colleagues and having support from my colleagues. And
Mm,
so this past year was the toughest year I've ever had as a teacher.
yeah.
And my colleagues really rallied around me and advocated for me and then just supported me right down to like coming to my classroom during their free periods to
Wow.
co-teach with me, even though they weren't assigned to be in my room because my classes were so challenging. And so that really is what got me through this year. And then knowing that like the administration was doing everything they could to support me,
Mhm.
and that they had my back kind of helped me. And then obviously you have those little moments where you have students that you really connect with, and
Right.
you try to focus on
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
on the hard days. But yeah, this year I want to say I was very, very thankful for my colleagues in my department.
Yeah. There's nothing like good relationships with your colleagues.
Yes.
I think teaching, a lot of times people think of teaching as, you go in the room, you close the door, you do your thing, and you might try it, but when you're having difficult times, we need one another,
Yeah.
So you've been doing this 13 years. How has it
My 13.
changed? This say that again, I'm sorry.
I'm going into my
You're
13th.
going into your 13th year. How is it different than say 13 years ago or 8 years ago or 5 years ago? There have been changes. What would you say is the most noticeable difference in terms of you getting in there every day and teaching?
Students are not the same. So we saw a shift initially when I came back to the classroom after COVID was when I
Mhm,
saw the biggest change in
mhm,
students not having the social emotional skills that they needed to cope with being
mm,
in a school building.
mhm.
I saw a lot of crying that year from ninth graders. I teach ninth grade. And
Yeah.
as students were trying to adjust to just being, in a classroom and going between rooms and dealing with the stress of having
Wow.
interactions, I saw a lot of crying. I saw students who couldn't even present in front of a classroom, just sitting at their desk and talking to the room as a whole.
Mhm,
Students had a lot of trouble with that. That has gotten a little better in since that first year back, 2021.
mhm.
But the biggest change that I'm seeing now is students are, um, they don't have a lot of hope and they're unmotivated.
Really?
So, um, and I think it's definitely a connection to technology, their phones. So they're constantly receiving that instant gratification of being on their phones and, you know, watching TikTok and it's dopamine, dopamine, dopamine. So then whenever that's not in front of them, there's like this low and they can't, it's like they're in a funk and they can't even kind of get out of that
Yeah.
to have meaningful conversation. You're an ELA teacher. That's a huge part of what we do in a classroom is that deeper level thinking, having that meaningful conversation. And I really struggled to pull that out of some of them this year, a
Mm,
lot of them,
yeah.
because they just weren't interested.
And does that affect discipline?
Yes, I do a workshop for our homeschool parents who
Mhm.
teach at our co-op, and I talk about classroom management, kind of like a crash course in like teaching, since they're
Yeah,
not teachers, they're parents. And
right.
I used to say, I haven't had to write a referral for discipline in X years. Well, that all changed last year.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, because I had students, and I think it's a combination of the two things I just said, but like students who couldn't handle if I changed the seating chart.
Mhm.
They would come in and just s- throw a fit, for lack of a better term, and turn around and leave the room.
Wow.
Um, yeah, or students who, and I am very, I don't want to say accommodating, but I'm understanding. So I would, if you have a problem with your seat, take a seat, shoot me an email, we'll talk about it later. Like,
Mhm.
tell me the reason, so I hear you out. I'm not,
Right.
difficult, I
Right.
feel like.
Yeah.
And they just could not, any changes in seating. I think the first day I was going over classroom expectations and I had a girl raise her hand and say, I don't want to be here. Can I leave? I don't like this class. Just straight out.
Wow.
First day. Yeah. And that student later in the year got out her cell phone and ordered Domino's while I was teaching. Yes. She
What?
was like, she's like at the extreme end of things, but yeah,
Right.
I never saw anything like that in my life.
I'm listening to you. I'm thinking that might be something where either my mouth would just be like, or
Yeah,
I would just be telling her where to. I got your domino.
I kind of stood there like I didn't really, I was at a loss for a minute. I could not comprehend that that's what was happening.
Okay, Krista. So we know that a lot of these kids were affected by the whole coronavirus stuff.
Mhm.
Is that it? Is that all that and that's at play here? And of course, obviously technology and everything.
Mhm.
Is that it? Or is there something else going on here that you're having to deal with in school with these kids? Because you said something, you said, hold that thought, because you said something about them not having a lot of hope. And I want
Mm.
you to expound on that also.
Yeah, I think we talked and I asked them, what do you want to do? What do you think you want to be?
Mhm,
When you get older, is there a career you want to pursue? Because I like to connect what we're doing in
mhm,
the classroom to that real life,
right.
give it value in the real world. I'm not wasting your time. Here's how you're going to use this.
Yes.
And I just had some students who couldn't, I don't know, I'm not sure, I haven't thought about it, I don't want to be anything. And I remember one class in particular, I asked them about how they talk to themselves,
Mhm,
and they didn't really have a concept of self-talk, and the ones who did mention it were very hard on themselves. They were negative,
right.
so they talk down to themselves, I guess is a good way to put it.
Mhm.
So they don't have that inner hope. I am a believer, so my hope is in Christ, and I
Amen.
know I
Yes.
have a purpose.
Right.
Mm, but they are lacking that
Right.
purpose and that value of, I am here for a reason, and I'm important, and there's things I can do in this world, and
Mhm.
they're just.
Yeah. Was that part of the reason you went into teaching because you wanted to be able to instill a sense of purpose and hope?
I wouldn't say it was. I went into teaching because I knew that was what I was called to do. So I kind of didn't think much about it. And once I got in the classroom, I knew I was passionate about it.
Mhm.
And that kind of just came naturally for me. I have always felt very strongly that because we're created in the image of God, all people have value.
Yes.
And that's how I treat my students. And that is something I want to instill in them, that you are valuable, and that's how I run my classroom. And we talk about that. They treat each other with value, and
Yeah.
we talk about how they treat themselves. But
Mhm.
yeah, I would say it's definitely something that I make a priority in the classroom, is that I want them to know that they are important and that I believe in them, and
Yes.
that, they have a purpose.
Mhm. Yeah. And that's why teachers like you are so valuable. And yet you had a tough year last year,
Oh
and
yeah.
now you're ready to get back at it again.
Mhm.
So, with the year that you had and the challenges you face and administration faces, and I know from experience, sometimes the challenge is the administration,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so, and you've got wonderful colleagues, but I also know, and I had wonderful colleagues, we have some of the same colleagues, but I
Mhm.
also know that sometimes it's difficult working with other people, other colleagues, right? So how do you get yourself up to get back in there and just in just a few weeks? What's your why is really what I'm asking at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. No, that's a good because I've been thinking about that, I went in the last few um probably in the last week, I have been thinking about, you always have a few students every year that you really connect with
Yes.
and ones who are um I had a student who came to our district. He was new to us in January, but he was new to the US
Mm-hmm.
a year prior to that. He came from Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So when he came to our school, he was still getting very used to the culture, the people, and he was having a hard time. And he would come early to class to talk to me, or if there's something bothering him, he would stay for a minute at the end. And I sent him to the guidance office a couple times because, like to let him know he had support there and to talk. And he told the guidance counselor, I'm okay, I can talk to Mrs. Manchuk.
Mm-hmm.
And and he told me at the end of the year, thank you, you really helped me. And just those are the students that keep me coming back,
Yeah.
and I had very specific conversations with him about you have value, you have purpose, because he was not getting that message from his peers. It was
Yeah.
very the opposite.
Right. Right.
Just letting him know, like you work hard and like you don't need to listen to what they're telling you. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're here for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And another student, I just ran into her at a restaurant last week and she was like, I'll see you in September. I'm going to come see you and I'm going to visit your classroom and I miss you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So that's what I try to focus on, those connections and those meaningful relationships that get you through the Domino's calls.
That's beautiful. Okay, but when I was working with you, you were full-time teaching, weren't you?
Yes.
Okay, and
Yes.
now you're part-time. What caused the transition?
So I actually so I haven't taught for 12 years straight. I took a break in the middle, a 4-year break. So
Mhm,
I had my oldest son, and then I was out for 4 years.
mhm,
And I had been teaching full time. I got laid off because of budget cuts, but it
mhm.
worked out because I got to stay home with my
Yeah.
kids. And then
Mhm,
I went back
mhm,
because they had an opening and it was a part time position. It was only one class. And
mhm.
they called me and said, oh, we have one class, but you don't want it. And I was like, yes, I do. I do want it.
I really
So
do.
yeah, I'll come back because I knew at that point, before that, I wasn't sure, but I knew at that point I wanted to be back in teaching. I wanted to be in the district I'm in. I miss the kids, I miss the students.
Yeah.
And so I went back and I have very much chosen to stay part time.
Mhm,
They need full time teachers, but I am part time because I have 4 kids at home and I homeschool,
mhm.
as you know, so I need that time home with them. So I teach 3 classes at the school every day, and I'm home the rest of the day with my kiddos.
Okay, so what does the day look like? You have 3 in a row, and then you have 3 right in the morning, and then you're home and you start homeschooling.
Yes. So it's changed over the years. This year it'll be 3 in the morning and then I'll be home. Last year it was 3 in the afternoon.
Oh,
So yeah, but I had to change our schedule a little bit this year. So it'll be 3 in the morning and then home with the kids for the rest of the day.
okay. And so is your husband home at the time when you're not home?
hmm So
Okay.
some of the days he is. We are part of a homeschool co-op, and
Okay.
so he will take them to that because it's in the morning. So he's going to do that, and then I have family that stays with them on those other 4 days a week.
Yeah. So why? would you opt to have the kids homeschooled versus being in public school like you teach?
Right. So our um, initially my kids went to public school, my oldest two,
Mhm,
and homeschooling was always in the back of our minds. We kind of just figured we would feel it out and see how it went and send them.
mhm,
And then I don't even remember the year now.
mhm,
I figured it out the other day, but now I forgot. But if my oldest was he finished third grade. New York State took away our religious exemption for vaccination.
mhm,
So that forced us to pull them out and have them home. And
mhm.
so that is initially what made us take the leap into homeschooling. But
Yeah,
now, if I had the choice to send them back to public school, I would not send them back to public school.
you would
I would,
not.
no,
You would keep them home or
or
um
send them to private Christian school.
private Christian school.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
I gotta ask because you're there every day. I mean, you did tell me some of the challenges you're dealing with. Um, is that why? Because it's just a challenging atmosphere? Why not? Why Christian school or private school and not a public school like the one you go to every day?
Yeah. There's a lot of reasons, but my faith in Jesus Christ, my belief in him, also brings with it the belief that, like I said before, my children were created for a purpose
Mhm,
and they have a big job to do on this earth. And this time when they're younger is so important.
mhm,
And if they're in an atmosphere that's not reinforcing that value and that purpose,
mhm,
they are too valuable to me to send them out into a public school where there's so many conflicting messages that go against what we believe
mhm.
at home. And so it's not that I'm sheltering them. I don't believe your children should be sheltered, but
Mhm.
I want to say I'm controlling the way that those messages are received. So when those things come up, we can talk about them in our home and I
Mm,
can give them the truth of
right,
what the Bible says about these things and we can discuss it as a
right,
family,
right.
instead of them hearing it first at school from their teacher
Mhm,
and
mhm.
then being confused because teachers hold authority in a classroom. The studies show the teacher is the single most influential factor
Yeah,
in student success.
right,
So, that's a lot of power to give to
right,
someone else over my child
right.
when they're
And it
7, 8, 9, 10.
right, and it may conflict with what you know to be true. When
Yes.
I'm listening to you reminds me of a friend of mine, when her children were very young, before school age. Well, they're
Mhm.
all grown now, but I remember her specifically saying that she wanted her children to be in public school because she wanted them to influence the culture and everything. And then she put her kids when they got older in Christian school, and I reminded her of what she said. And
Mhm.
she said, I realized that, my kids are not going to be the guinea pigs.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yes.
mean? They're not going to be the guinea pigs. I'm going to make sure that they have the values that God has for them to have in their lives and they can impact lives. They don't have to be in the public school to be an influence and impact lives, but I'm not throwing my kids to the wolves, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
that was her mindset in the beginning. And then she's like, these kids off the charts. They are
Yeah. And and I think being a teacher and having had those conversations about values, beliefs with other colleagues,
Mhm,
um, I know some are good at not projecting that into their teaching. Others do it purposefully.
true.
And you can't teach your personal beliefs as part of the curriculum.
Right.
I am very intentional about not telling the students what I think when we discuss things
Mhm,
because I want them to tell me what they think. And if they
right,
disagree with my personal beliefs,
mhm,
I don't want them to feel like they can't say that. So I if they ask me, I'll tell them,
right.
but I am not I'm trying not to influence them in that way.
Mhm,
And so, but I know that there are teachers who do that on purpose.
Mhm.
and it's wrong,
Yeah,
you know?
it's a wild, it can be a wild environment
Yeah.
out there, really wild. And I think even more so today, the literature, some of the, I've been in the battle with the public libraries. I know it's in the public schools with the
Yeah.
child pornography, and so I don't even have children myself, and yet I'm fighting that battle for people, for other people's children. So I would say, and I imagine you agree, that parents need to be up on what is going on. Not to say that it's a horrible place and all teachers are bad, and all. You and I are not saying that, but I
Right.
I think we are saying that you need to know what's going on. Um,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes, definitely. You need to be aware. You need to be aware.
yeah. So how do you make sure your children are well socialized? I mean, I know you talked about the co-op, but they also the sports. How where are the sports come in?
Yes, so they play travel sports right now. My
Mhm.
older three are all doing, my daughter does travel softball, and my older two boys do travel baseball. So that actually goes all year round.
Mm.
We had like a 3.5 week break just recently. They just started up with practices again.
Mhm.
And then they take off like a month around Christmas time. But so they, have built some good friendships with those teammates because you're with them all year.
Right, right.
And then, we spend a lot of time with our co-op. Our co-op does field trips every other week for the entire school year. So you
Mhm.
get an opportunity to meet other kids because there are some kids who come to field trips that don't go to the co-op and so forth. But we make sure our kids get out. And the other thing is, like they're all excited because I'm home for the summer. So they have friends over all the time.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
like, sure, the more the merrier.
Yeah, that's
Um,
cool. So the co-op is a place where other homeschooling families get together.
yep.
How often?
So ours is they have classes every other Tuesday and then a field trip opposite that. So they meet, you have the option to meet every week, but one week would be classes. So they do art, gym, music,
Mhm.
and there's something else that I'm forgetting. There's
Mhm.
like that other one can be like science, life skills. It's like an elective. They have the opportunity to stay for clubs afterwards, and those are parent led. So it's by interest. So last year we had Lego club, we had yearbook club, we had a sewing club. And then on the weeks opposite that, they have field trips and they go all over the place.
I
So,
absolutely love this, and I'm gonna give you the floor for a moment because I want you to address parents. There are parents I know because I've talked to homeschooling parents before. We both know Kristen Coons, for example, and she's like got it down to a science. I had her on the show a year or two ago. I had someone on who pulled their children out of public school, and they were it was an adjustment, but they were very glad. But it's not like some people think it's just some haphazard stuff, and none of the stuff you're talking about. But there are parents who feel like I can't do it. There's no way I can handle it, or I'm worried about my kids and how are they going to receive it, whatever. So if you had the floor to just encourage, and this is not a diss on public schools, but I believe in school choice, and this is a choice. And so for those who are looking at that choice, how do you encourage those who don't feel like this is something they could possibly swing?
I think the beautiful thing about homeschooling is that you can build it around what works for you.
Mm.
And you need to find a community that supports you. So, the beautiful thing about our co op is that there's are a lot of other moms. There's a lot of support. For example, I was just talking to another mom 2 days ago because I was thinking about switching curriculums. It's one that she uses. And so I was asking her, what do you like about it? How did it work for your kids? How did you implement it? And she was able to explain it all to me and give me an inside look into that.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I think then the first thing is trying to find some support, a group, other moms, whether it be like a Facebook group or a co-op or something, find someone else who's doing it. But, I find as moms, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves because
Mhm.
we want the best for our kids. But
Right.
the flip side of that is we don't often believe in ourselves enough.
Mm.
I'm a teacher and I still second guess.
Sure.
because you want your kids to have the absolute best. So I think really believe like you know your kids better than anyone else. And the beautiful thing about homeschooling is that you can say like my child needs extra support here, I'm going to find that for them, or they're really excelling here so I can maybe push them a little harder or let them do a more challenging course,
Right.
because you know them. You know, you can look at them and tell if they're not feeling well, like, and you really have to trust that as a mom.
Right.
And it's the same thing when it comes to the socialization. You know if your kids are not getting out enough, if they need more of something, and finding ways to make that happen. But there are online programs, there are online schools you can join, you know, and the other misconception is that if you homeschool, you have to teach your kids, like you have to be the one, but that's not true at all.
Mm.
You are supervising their education, but you can hire a tutor, you can team teach with another mom. So if you're really into science and she's not, you know, you guys can team up and do science on
Right.
Tuesdays and Thursdays, and
Mm-hmm.
she can teach your kids math and English, you know. So there are ways to make it work and you have that freedom to make
Mm-hmm.
it work.
Mm-hmm.
But before I even started, I actually worked as a coordinator, um, reviewing homeschool paperwork for Questar
Mm-hmm.
in the capital region here. And the mom that I worked with was homeschooling her daughter. And I was like, how are you doing that? You're working with me. And she
Right.
had, you know, enrolled her daughter in an online program and
Mm-hmm.
she supported her and she got her a tutor, but she was homeschooling. That counts, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and it's really just you're overseeing your child's education, but you don't have to teach them every single thing. And I
Right.
think that's where moms get overwhelmed is you have tools and there's so much now. You can find anything on the internet, you
Um,
know?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
there are a lot, especially I feel like since COVID, when everyone had to go homeschool,
Right.
there's a lot of resources online that you can
Mm-hmm.
find, you know, for your kids. So
Yeah.
if you think, you know, if you're leaning that way, I would say don't doubt yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And the other biggest thing I always tell moms who worry is that one-on-one education is always going to be better than
Mm.
1 to 20. Or
Right.
now classrooms, last year my largest class was 28.
Yeah. Yeah.
Know?
I know what
So
this. Yeah, that's good. That's good. So I like talking to you because I feel like you represent the best of both worlds, for lack of a better phrase. In that, and you have the experience in both. So you could say, you know what, you have understanding of like, this is why this is best for my family, because I'm in this situation. I'm doing all that I can. I'm pouring into kids. They're wonderful teachers. There are wonderful administrators, but there are also some challenges, and some I would like my children to bypass. Let's just be
yeah,
honest.
yeah.
Okay. And
Oh yeah,
so,
yeah,
yeah, so you are among those teachers because although they're wonderful teachers, there are some who don't feel the calling that you just mentioned. You
mhm,
know, I knew I was called to teach.
yeah,
Or you are called to teach.
yeah,
And sometimes it's outside the classroom and begins to look different, but the calling is still there, right? Not everybody necessarily feels that way. And
mhm,
so there are people who are so glad you are there, whether part-time or whatever, because you are called, because you do want them to know they have value, and because you're pouring into them, sacrificially even.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
but you are not willing to sacrifice your own children. And so you and your husband decided, I'm going to pour into other people's children there, and I'm going to come home, and we're going to do it the way it works for us here, you know.
yeah.
And I just think that's a beautiful thing. So before I let you go, I want to ask, because I want to be praying again as we start school here in just a few days on Wednesday, and you shortly. I really want to be praying for people who are going back into school, parents who are releasing their children
Mhm,
with all that's going on in the world, you know.
yeah.
Um, how specifically might we be praying for you and other teachers, really, but you're the one here with me, praying for you as you enter into your 13th year of teaching. And we're calling 13 the blessed year.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take
Yes,
it.
yes, yes. How might I and others who are watching and listening be praying?
Um, I think, there was a lot of teachers that I talked to, and I took some consolation in knowing we all found ourselves saying, it's good to know it's not me. Because we
Mhm,
were all having the same challenges, and I talked to a lot of veteran teachers
mhm,
who we were coming up against a wall and we were like, oh my gosh, these kids aren't doing work. These kids aren't listening. These kids don't care. Like there's no motivation and we don't know what to do.
mhm.
And we all kind of were like, oh, good. I'm glad it's not just me. You're hearing the same thing or
Yeah,
So
mhm.
I think the hardest thing about that is having the endurance
Right.
to stay and remain
Mhm.
in that situation day in and day out when you feel like as a teacher who's passionate and committed, you're putting in a lot of effort.
Yeah.
And at times it costs you something,
Sure.
So I'm part-time, but I don't get paid for a prep. So
Right.
every night when I sit down at my computer and I'm updating my slides and planning activities, like that's on my time, you
Sure.
know? And
Yes.
so I think for teachers who are do feel passionately about what they do, it's hard to stay
Mhm.
um, at that level of excellence when you feel like it's not appreciated or
Yeah.
hardly at all, for the entire year. The school year can be long.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I think that would be one of the biggest things is for endurance for
Mhm.
teachers.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And then also there was a lot of the other main thing I noticed was that it used to be there was like a baseline of respect that students had for teachers.
Mhm.
So I think even when you were there and when I first started for a while, it was right up until COVID, probably. If
Mm.
I treat you with respect as a teacher and I'm fair and you feel like I'm being fair at least, or I'm willing to make that connection with you and meet you at some point, that would be reciprocated,
Yeah.
even to the point of loyalty. You see that in students who feel like,
Yeah.
okay, this teacher gets me, I'm going to work a little harder for her. I'm going to
Yeah.
try to rally my peers. That kind of disappeared. And
Really?
so that baseline of respect is gone um,
Wow.
for authority. Yes. To the
Mhm.
point, I mean, and I know our district can be extreme, but to the point of like, I had students cussing me out in the classroom. I've never had that before.
Wow.
Um, it was the same thing where we had educators, seeing students in the hallway and saying, "Hey, where are you supposed to be?" And that student flipping out and cussing them out.
Mhm.
Um, just, lack of basic respect. And
Mm.
I think they treat everyone like that. It's not just their teachers, it's all adults, it's all people.
Right.
Really for teachers to be able to again um maintain a heart of forgiveness and not take that personal and still teach, like to be
Yeah.
soft-hearted and tender-hearted because like I'm a believer and I'm like trying my darndest, but that gets hard after a
Yeah.
while, when you feel like, you know,
Mhm.
here
Mhm.
I am,
Yeah.
staying up till 10:30 to make this activity and you're cussing me out like
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
so it's
Ooh.
and I think, a lot like do pray for your teachers, pray for those, they really are in the trenches. We used to say we're in the trenches, we're really in the trenches now,
Yeah.
day in,
Yeah,
day
even
out.
more so. I was in the trenches. I've been there too, but yeah, it's woo.
Yeah,
Definitely want to do that. Want to be praying for you
I
all. And
appreciate that.
yeah, I'll be praying. Yeah. Thank you so much
Yeah,
for
thank you for having
your
me.
time and wish you the best and your beautiful children.
I
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Krista.
Thank you.
All right. God bless you.
All right, you too. Take care.
I hope you enjoyed that talk with Krista Manchuk. You can see that she absolutely has a heart for children as well as her own children. And with the school year approaching here and where she is, I really wanted us to focus in on education, on the joys of teaching, the challenges of teaching, the opportunities with homeschooling or Christian schooling or whatever. And I really, really want to encourage parents, grandparents, aunties, uncles, etc., to really know what's going on with your children, with their teachers, because it's so important and we're living in such crucial times. And so I want to take this moment. I said to Krista, I want to pray. I want to know how we can pray for you. And I want to know, and I want to pray. I want to not just say it, but I want to do it. And so what better time than right now? We're going to pray for not just Krista, but what she talked about in general. Because endurance, listen, I did it for almost 20 years. Endurance can be a thing. Okay. I want to pray for that endurance. I want to pray for that soft heart. And I want to pray for our children, because we are in a time where it's like the respect for authority is lacking. And God does have a purpose and a plan for these young people. And so I want to just pray for them as well across the board. So Father, I thank you for Krista, and I thank you for teachers like her. I thank you that you've placed your hand upon their lives. You placed the calling on them to be a light in the schools, God. I thank you, Father, for people who are willing to pour out into young people, even like she talked about, being able to let them know that they have a purpose, that there is a plan for their lives, that they're not here by accident, that they're special. And God, in the midst of all that's going on in the world, I pray, Father, that you would enable these teachers to endure when it's not easy. And we know that it's not always easy. There are so many challenges. And so, Father, I thank you for endurance. I thank you for hearts that are able to be soft and pliable and forgiving. Father, I pray for children to know their worth, Father, and that they would behave accordingly. I pray against that spirit that just resists authority, Father. I pray, Father, against the effects of a culture that has created this, Lord. And I thank you for the joys of teaching, as well as, I guess, the challenges. We should thank you in everything that your word says. We ought to give thanks. And Father, I just ask that you would be to be with every teacher, be with Krista. I pray your hedge of protection around our schools. I pray for your safety, Father. I pray, Father, for their minds, their bodies, their spirits, their souls to be covered and to be protected in Jesus' name. And that even though Krista and others may not be able to get there and preach the gospel, I thank you that their light shines and the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ, would just exude from them, Lord. I just thank you for every plan that you have, and I believe it's going to come to pass in their lives. We speak that in Jesus' name. Amen. So thank you for being a part of this episode of the Adrienne Ross Show. I enjoy being able to talk education and even a little bit of basketball with Krista Manchuk. So, hey, remember to subscribe. We have hit 16,000. I was saying it's taken a long time to get to 16,000. So we have gotten there. I don't know how far over we are, but we've definitely gotten to 16,000. So thank you for that. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. Also, I am a part of the BMG Network. That is the bmgnetwork.com. Check it out. And the other podcasters there. Don't forget, I'm also a writer. You can check out my writing at adrienneross.substack.com. Subscribe there. There are a few subscription options. So thank you so much for tuning in. I will catch you next time, God willing. God bless you abundantly.